coming up on the Outside of Sunday podcast. Even broach the subject. How do you share your feelings when you are basically being told that they are invalid?
If he's in that place of life of needing pornography and feeling like he must defend and protect that need, it's possible he might not be in a very good place in life or have really revelation on how to hold space for your emotions. So you must find trusted friends or people who can walk you through the depths of the pain. Some people could even be traumatized from the sense of betrayal. There's trauma betrayal therapists out there and all sorts of people that can help you first assess the depths of the pain you feel. Work on your vulnerable message so that you can show it to someone else, practice it, so that when you do come to your husband, you've weeded out judgmental statements that is you, and you see what you, more I'm hurting. Are you willing to hear it?
Hey, you're listening to the Outside of Sunday podcast. Is your faith stuck on Sunday? Christianity was never meant to be constrained to a weekly church service. I'm Krista, and here you'll find discussions on the Bible, mum life, and of course, how to live your faith outside of Sunday. Hey Outsiders, it's Krista here. Before we start today's episode, I just wanted to say, please extend me a little bit of grace. We've been having some technical issues, and this week and next week's podcasts, the audio is just not where I want it to be. And so I'm a little bit embarrassed because I just want it to be for you guys the best that it possibly can be. So unfortunately, we're having issues with one of our microphones. It basically failed during this episode. So we had to use the camera audio because it was not working. So these technical issues are hopefully going to be resolved, but I recorded this week's episode and next week's episode on the same day. So we had these same persisting issues. Even though the audio quality isn't great and at the level that I want it to be for you guys, I know that you will still get so much out of today's episode and next week's. So enjoy, and sorry about the bad audio. Welcome everyone to this episode of the Outside of Sunday podcast. Today with me we have Cora Dawson, who's come all the way from Tauranga. Thank you so much, Cora.
So far.
So far, such a hike. But thank you for being here. I know that you have so much wisdom to share, and honestly I feel like I could just pick your brain all day and be blessed, so thank you. But I know a bit about you. I had the pleasure of sitting in on one of your Restoring Connections courses run by you and your husband Matt, and also we had like a little Newcastle, New South Wales connection, which was fun.
Yes.
But for those of us who don't know you, could you just tell us a little bit about you and what you and Matt do?
Yeah, so I'm French originally, and my husband Matthew is Kiwi American, but grew up in Los Angeles. And he was part of a family who established YWAM, Youth with a Mission. And I did YWAM DTS, a discipleship training school with YWAM in Australia, and that's where we met. And after falling in love and meeting and having our children there, initially we had our first daughter there. We moved to New Zealand because he's a Kiwi. So essentially, we were in YWAM, Youth with a Mission, for a long time. And on the back of our experience in YWAM, we realized there was really a need, we thought, for equipping and supporting people who are in leadership with all sorts of tools to have healthy relationships. We realized a lot of teams fall apart, or even marriages often fall apart when we don't have the right tools. So essentially, in the last 5 years, we established a not-for-profit work that's about peacemaking, reconciliation, conflict resolution, and all things connection, relationship. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what we've been doing in the last 5 years, and it's called Restoring Connection. So we offer personal mentoring, team mentoring, workshops, all sorts of tools so that we can support people in their relational journeys.
Yeah. So is that something that you're doing out of a Christian capacity, or do you go into workplaces that are non-Christian? How does your faith intertwine with that, or if at all?
Yeah. Well, initially, our status is missionary because we have had donors and support for all the volunteer work and community work that we did in YWAM. And Youth with a Mission is a mission movement. So it is a bit of our DNA to give of ourselves to voluntarily to the community. We are really involved in various aspects of our community in Tauranga, and so we've wanted to keep our volunteer status, and we still have 25 plus years donors who support us financially for everything we do. But of late, since we established our own not-for-profit work, which is not part of the structure of YOM, we found that business owners were reaching out to us word of mouth. They heard what we were doing and asked us, would you do what you do but not in YOM or not in ministry? Would you do it in my business? Because we need relational tools. People are struggling in a workplace, and actually, would you do what you do but not with the Christian language? And we thought, well, yeah, we can do that. So we de-Christianized the language in order to be in a sphere where people don't know God or don't know Jesus or don't profess to following Jesus. So we do definitely have the heart to do kingdom work in businesses. And what we did is that we wanted to be generosity based. So people needed to understand that our heart to get involved in the business context was to help people get along and to further the kingdom of God. So the owners usually are Christians. They understand what we do. And actually we find ourselves praying in offices with people and introducing the idea of the gospel to people through the course. So we do have a agreement with the owner where they give a certain amount for all the work that we do, but we don't get paid personally. We've chosen to give everything back 100% to the not-for-profit work so we can advance the work, and so we're more volunteer workers.
Okay,
so I hope that makes sense.
I'm just going to ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So the not-for-profit work that you do,
Yeah.
is that including the work in workplaces, or is that separate?
No, it is the not-for-profit work.
Okay,
yes,
okay.
Yes.
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if there was like another branch of it.
No. So it's team mentoring. So we go into the work and the workplace, and we ask lots of questions. I do coaching sessions. I'm actually a strengths coach and an ego coach, so I can offer that for the purpose of getting people to understand each other better. And then we do a workshop on our training, everything that has to do with restoring connection, values, and principles that we teach. And then on the back of that, we have a mentoring process that we make sure people understand how to apply the principles and hold people accountable to. And then sometimes we mediate as well, relationally, not professionally, in a workplace mediation context, but just more, we mediate between two people who are having issues not hearing each other, and we help them hear each other better. So,
and that's something I found with your Restoring Connections course. I was just like, this is fantastic. Everyone needs to do this because the skills that, honestly, the stuff that you talk about, it's almost like everyone needs to go through this almost at school level. Because I'm like, this can help all of us, with your relationship with your parents, perhaps your siblings, your friends, your family, and definitely in a workplace. I'm like, a lot of bosses probably need to go, like, this is just fantastic. So I really love that work. And your husband does a podcast as well.
Yeah, he does.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Just because I know people are going to listen to this and then they're going to want to hear more.
Cool. That's sweet. Yeah, so he's got a real gift in communication. I admire him so much. It's not really my gift as much, but he really is so gifted in storytelling, and he's compelling. He's so he runs the Restoring Connection podcast essentially, and it's really aimed at equipping people for all aspects of peacemaking, reconciling. So he'll approach the subject of conflict resolution from many different angles. So he's even interviewed my son one time, and then my daughter. So it's fun, and me many times. So
that sounds like a lot of fun.
It's really fun. We tell our stories of complete failures. So if you want to hear everything we've done badly, then go and have a listen to that.
All right, that sounds great. Okay, so let's go back now to your faith. So you said you grew up in France. Yeah. And you have this ministry now of Restoring Connections, but what was your connection with Christ growing up in France? Did you have a Christian community around you? What was that like? Yeah,
so I grew up in a Christian family, and I'm very grateful for that, because actually for France, it's not a given. I think it's I don't want to get it wrong, but I think the data is like you've got under maybe 1% of the population that's born again Christian. You know, you've got a lot of Catholic by profession or by religion, but it's not really a nation where the idea of following Jesus is really common or something that people talk about. So I felt very lonely at school growing up because most people don't understand following Jesus. So it was really, I was in a Christian family and I had a church experience every Sunday, but it was really hard to reconcile school life and church life because it was very, very apart. But I did have a beautiful community. It was a Baptist church with like maybe 150 of us. It's a small little community. And it was the only church in about 50K radius that you could find, like a, evangelical church, a Baptist church. And so my experience was as a young French girl who really wanted to know God more. I was pretty rational. It was like, well, God's going to need to really appear in my room to tell me that he's real, because I'm just not sure if I can really believe this. And so it was a very French rational way of exploring faith. But I did have a very powerful encounter when I was 14. I think I was seeking for it as well. I was open to it. But I had a very deep, powerful encounter, and that just, I was sold. I was like,
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so there was a conference with somebody who had just been in Canada. I don't know if you remember the Toronto movement of like a lot of supernatural sign back in the 90s. I don't know if you've heard of that. Anyway, so this pastor from France had gone to this massive revival in Toronto that was happening, and he was really impacted, and he saw signs and wonders. Then he came back to France, and he put together a conference, and he called it the Father Hat Conference. I was invited by my best friend, and I didn't really think much of it. I was like, oh, sounds fun, going to a conference with my best friend. She was also part of the church. But actually, God really apprehended me at that conference where he spoke, and he then gave an altar call to say, if you really want to encounter the comfort of the Holy Spirit to heal your heart from pain and wounding, then come at the front. And I knew I needed to go at the front, and I wept like I've never wept before, and I knew that it was a deep sense of healing from some really I felt rejected. My boyfriend had broken up with me. I felt really unloved by my parents. I found out later in life that there's some information about how my dad wasn't sure I should even be born, and there was like all these things about a sense of rejection over my life. So it was so powerful, and there was no way I could have received that comfort other than an all-powerful being that loved me. So that was my conversion experience. That was my I am in. I'm following Yeshua. I'm following Jesus. And so
I love that. Yeah, I love that so much. And I know that there are people who are just like, I need to see God. I need to touch God. And we can forget that he is spirit, He can touch you in a way that is in here. He can heal you in a way that's in here. And he might not physically appear to us, but he can appear to us in our lives. So I think that's so amazing. So how did things shift for you after that?
I think I had this newfound understanding that the Father is interested in me. Jesus made a way so that I can understand that. And Holy Spirit is there for me to comfort me in any circumstance I face where I'm hurt or I'm pain, so I'm never alone. So that became really real for me, that it wasn't just a concept in the sky or a belief system or what's right and wrong, but it became a real relationship with an all-powerful being that genuinely cares for me, really is interested, notices me, wants my attention, wants to relate to me and speak to me. And that became a completely new story of my eyes were open to I'm loved, I'm wanted. And that was huge, So I guess everything, at that point I decided I wanted, then he prophesied over me, this guy. He said, you're going to go and travel the nations. You're going to live in a place where you don't speak French. You're going to be, he's prophesied such specific things over my life that made so much sense in my spirit. And so it changed everything, because then I started to look for a way that I could go somewhere and do a course to know more about God. So I looked for mission courses or like Bible courses, and by the time I was 18, it was like one-track mind. I want to know more about God, and I want to make him known, like this love that he's given me. I want to make sure people experience that as well. How do I do that? And so then I found YWAM randomly, and that's what got me on this path of following Jesus and making him known.
That's such a fruit, that's such a fruit of salvation.
Yeah.
That I just love is that you just the thankfulness, of what the Lord does and just the way that he impacts us to just be like, my whole life now is about Jesus.
Yeah, and it wasn't anything of like, I must obey, I'm afraid if
I know,
don't.
right?
It was more like so much joy to
overflowing, and that's what leads us to do things for Christ. Is we're just overflowing with thankfulness and gratefulness for what Jesus did for us, each and every one of us. Wow. So how long have you been in Christ now? You were quite young. Oh, I don't want to give away your age here.
I'm 43. Oh, good. I was 14. What's the math?
So 30, 29 years?
Yeah, there we go.
Wow.
You can count that quickly.
I feel like so. So I was just wondering for people listening, because I feel like we have all types of people listening, people who are non-Christians, people who are fresh in their faith,
That's awesome.
people who are more mature. So what does faith look like compared to those early days to someone who's been walking with the Lord for 29 years? I mean, I feel like this is a big question, but in the best way that you can, how would you articulate that difference?
I think being 14, 15, even up to doing my disciple training course with YWAM, I was 19, and then I became one of the main leaders on the base at 21, all these really young adult experiences. I really had I'm so in love with Jesus. He's so there for me, and it was amazing. By example, I remember one time, I was the worship leader. Everything I had to do with worship, I was directing all that aspect of things on the YWAM base, because you all live together and you live in community. And so I remember one morning I was getting ready. We had a big event where I had to go and practice to lead worship. No, it wasn't in the morning, sorry. It was at dusk, and it was maybe 5 or 6 in the afternoon. And the team is waiting for me because I don't know what I was doing. I was getting ready, and the team is honking in the van telling me, hurry up, hurry up. And I had this deep, deep sensation that God said to me, I want you to walk forward and not go to the van, but go at the end of the street. And I'm like, why would I do something so stupid? It's so weird. Why would I do that, God? But I did it. It's this simple obedience as a 19-year-old. And I walked forward, and they were looking at me honking, where are you going? And I go to the end of the street, and I saw the most magnificent Australian sunset. Aussie sunsets, there is nothing like it in the world. Spectacular. The color are so vibrant. I just could do nothing but weep looking at it. And he said, I just wanted to show you. And I felt like, he loves me so much. He romances me. It's so amazing. Yeah. And so I felt all these things as a 19-year-old. And then when you just start having children and you grow and you have more trials, your love gets a little bit more stale, and you go through these difficult times that you start doubting the love of God. And, that's probably the difference, where my love for God and the way God has loved me through my failures as a mother, as a wife, and all those things that went on since then, is so much stronger, so much more mature. But, there's these moments where he brings me back to those moments, and he shows me again that there's a sunset, or there's something that I could miss out on if I don't just stay really connected to him. So that's why these two kind of part of my life connect really well. But there's the withering, right? There's the times where your love for God gets tested, and you're like, stuff you weren't there for me when I gave birth to my child, and it was traumatic, or whatever else happened in my life,
Yeah.
So I would say that's how I see it now. I see it so strong, it's so solid, but it's gone through a lot of storms, and therefore I feel closer to him now, but it's not as innocent and La La Land, and, so it's much more solid,
You know what it reminds me of? How in the Word of God it talks about, the bridegroom and the bride.
Yeah.
And what you just described right there, it just so reminds me of married life even. You meet your husband, and it's all goosebumps and wonderful, and you're just overwhelming with love, and just this person loves me back. How amazing. And it's so wonderful. And then you're married.
And it gets tough.
And it gets tough. It definitely gets tough. But since we're on the vibe of marriage, could you tell us a little bit about how you and Matt met? And just, I know you've been married for how long now?
20 years.
20. Okay, great. What a great round number for a podcast. 20 years, guys.
There you go.
So I was wondering if you could tell us, a little bit about how you met, but also just like how easy marriage is. You know, I mean, that's kind of a joke. That's a little bit of a joke, but just like a little bit of your marriage journey.
Yeah. Well, you know, there was 2 years when I first met Matt at the YWAM base. I was the worship director. Actually, the first time I ever talked to Matthew, he came to me because he's a bass player. He's 2 years younger than me, so I was like the established leader on bass, and he came as like a young 19-year-old looking at me like, oh, she's a scary girl. And he wanted to be part of the worship team, but he didn't want to put it that way. I think he wanted to just show he was willing to serve. And usually this was a young base with lots of young people from all around the world, and all of them were musicians, and they all wanted to be on the worship team, and I was the doorway to the worship team. So you had to be friends with me to get to the worship team.
Gatekeeper, yeah.
And so he knew he had to kind of build a friendship with me. But he came and he asked me, is there any way that I could roll the leads once you guys are done? Or I could serve you guys water? Or can I actually do the words, the PowerPoint? No one wanted to do the words, but he asked if he could do the words. So that was my introduction to Matthew. And I was like, wow, he's got my attention because he's humble. And you know, he wasn't like trying to be all cute and stuff. Actually, he had the emo hairstyle, you know, like the early 2000 like emo hairstyle.
Greasy emo hairstyles.
Like MXPX, like the ear whatever thingy,
Earplugs.
like, you know, using earplugs. So I was like, he's young, you know, I wasn't like super interested like right away. But he did catch my attention right away from his humility. And I remember 2 years went on where I started really liking him and noticing him, and he liked me quite a bit. But we never knew. So for 2 years we observed each other, because I think we had passed with boyfriends and girlfriends, and so we wanted to wait and be sure this was God doing all the things right. You know? But it was so good that we did it that way. For right or wrong reason, we did it that way. But it was so helpful because I could observe him. And so, we got together there, and I loved those few years of being single. As I said, it was like Jesus was romancing me over and over again. Sometimes I'd have like candle night dinners with Jesus, you know?
You're so adorable.
And it was so cool because I could see I was so attracted to Matt, and I felt so rejected that he wasn't asking me out for 2 years. But it was like, God was like, but I want you. Like, am I enough for you? It was such a good question that I felt Jesus would always ask me, am I enough for you first and foremost? Like, am I enough for you? And I think that those 2 years were really key. And so we got together after 2 years. He finally popped the question, you know, and I was like, yes.
So he asked you to marry you.
Actually, I wouldn't have minded, and I would have said yes, because I was that sure after watching him for 2 years. There was no other guy that I wanted to be with. He showed such character. I absolutely admired him. And this is the thing that attracted me to him, is how really amazing and in integrity he was, and not flirty, and not he just really held himself with such dignity, and I was like, I like that. So that he asked me to go out with him, and then he asked me to marry him 2 months later. So it was pretty quick. And then 8 months later we were married, so it was pretty quick.
And then it was just a dream.
It was a dream. Actually, for a good 7 years it was smooth sailing. Like he's got a very gentle temperament and very accommodating, very kind, and I'm a strong personality. So it worked for me. It was great for 7 years. And then there's this one thing that happened, and he no longer was accommodating. And I was like, what is wrong? What? 7 years later, I was like, hold on, I'm not used to this. Like, and then he was there was some big things happening in his family, and I felt really unheard, and I was like, wasn't sure why he wasn't adapting like he usually does, and I was like, what's happening? And so we uncovered something that year that was very, very key for us to look at, where he was quite hurt with me and I was quite hurt with him. It took us a year to discuss it properly. Actually, for most of the year we didn't discuss it. I would yell and tell him he sucks and walk away, and he'd be like, yeah, whatever, you know, like, and we just weren't getting there. We just weren't hearing each other. And then I finally realized we need help. Oh my gosh, we need help. We've never needed help until now. Why are we needing help suddenly? And yes, there was some kind of like inner vows that both of us had made, and particularly him, and something about his family that he needed to let go of. And I needed to be much more gentle in the way that I brought that out of him. I was like trying to just like head at his head with the truth, you know. I was like, just not speaking the truth in love at all.
It's hard when you know, though.
It's like, I know, that's right. But that's exactly right. I was really coming through in such an angry way. It doesn't matter what I know. If I can't be caring, nothing's going to come through. And so, we learned at the end of that year. He prayed through some stuff. He had some revelation, and we learned. And so since then, I wouldn't say it's been smooth sailing for 20 years, but we've really decided at year 7 of our marriage, when this happened, we must work on our relationship.
Yeah. I feel like that was me and my husband in 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, smooth, happy. 10 years struggles.
Yeah.
But now I'm just feeling like I love my husband more than ever.
Yeah.
So it's great because that's what happens. You might stay at like the same for a long time, but when you go through the struggles, I don't know, did your love for your husband grow more? Because that's what I found.
I mean, tested love is the best kind of love, because until it is tested, it's easy. And do I really love you if I'm only willing to love you when it's easy? You know, I love tested love. Tested love goes so deep, and also it humbles you. You know, you realize, I am wrong often. Or you are sometimes too. And so really there's this, it's so much more profound and
it
meaningful.
And again, bring it back to the Lord. Similar thing. When you can go through the trial and get on the other side, your love for the Lord just grows and it deepens. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I thought since, because like I was saying at the beginning, you have a lot of wisdom to share. I feel like a counseling session with you or like a mentoring session with you is, it would just be so invaluable. So I almost wanted to kind of do a little bit of that for our listeners to like get a bit of... So like, let me just figure out how I'm going to word this properly. In a way, I feel like there is one particular topic that I thought that you and I could discuss, which would be incredibly valuable, not only for me, but also for all of our listeners. Because it will cover a very sensitive topic, but also I think it will also give us skills for other sensitive topics that may not be exactly the same. So recently on the podcast, we've been interviewing... we've kind of been discussing pornography quite a lot. So we had Victoria Sinis on. She was talking about OnlyFans, and then me and Julie Colbeth, who lives in Hamilton, we had a chat all about that, and we kind of shared like our first interactions with pornography. So we kind of had talked about it from like an individual perspective, and then also from the parenting side of things, like how do we handle this with our children? But we never have talked about a husband and wife situation, because I have wanted to talk about it, but I haven't felt like I have the wisdom to share on that. And so I really thought it would be great if I could bring it up with you, and then you could just help me. So I think a lot of people have had to have the discussion about pornography in their marriage. Has that been something that has been an issue for you and Matt? And how did you handle that? How did you tackle that?
So pornography, no. But temptation to go check some stuff on the internet, more like pictures, was an issue a few times, but very rarely. So I can't say that this has been a massive issue in my relationship with Matthew, in the sense that when he was tempted, or if he did go and check something on the internet, or linger looking at a picture longer than he knows he should, then he volunteered that information. We work it through and we talk it through. How did you feel? How do I feel? And for the most part, it wasn't something that I felt like I was really hurt with Matthew about, or has really impacted our relationship. However, I know that pornography was an issue in his life, before he was with me. And that was something he felt a lot of shame about, and it wasn't helpful for him in the sense of love of himself, and something that he didn't really want to engage in because it wasn't bearing the fruit that he wanted in his life. So it was a battle for him, and it was introduced to him when he was quite young, early teenage years, by, not by mistake, but I had a friend's house whose dad, had a porn channel, and it was really difficult for him because it sprung on him, and it really traumatized his developing brain. And so he had these secrets about it that he didn't want to tell anybody. He felt so ashamed that it had happened, but then he wanted to know more. His curiosity was leading him to want to go check it out more, and he would go back to his friend's house, and they would laugh about it, but then watch it, and all of that. So essentially, this was a point of shame for him that he had to really wrestle through, and because it didn't bring the fruit he wanted, this was not something that he wanted to bring into our marriage, and therefore, if tempted to look at other women in any way, he would certainly just tell me, no, I don't want that, and I want to volunteer information. I want to always talk about what I'm feeling and why and what's going on. And so I don't feel like it's impacted us negatively in our marriage, but I know many, many couples who have had to process these things, so I can understand why you would want to ask that question, you know?
Yeah. Well, Matt honestly sounds like a rare man, to be honest. I know that there is... it hasn't been a huge issue in our marriage, but it was something that I was super naive about. Right. And I thought, oh, you know, my husband would never struggles with that. And we never actually kind of talked about it before we got married. Yeah. And then when we got married, I was like, maybe I should just bring it up and just like ask the question. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, this is probably something that every man struggles with.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what he did struggle with when it comes to sexuality, that I think it's about this drive to get something from. That's what he struggled with, and looking at me as I need that sexual comfort from you in order to feel whole inside is something I'm trying to fill. That, yes, and at the beginning of a marriage, you know, it was easy, we don't have kids. I'm not tired all the time, I'm full of energy, we can have sex lots, this is great, this is fun. But then there's a time at which I might not be able to do that as much, and then he starts feeling that void. So he feels fulfilled, but really that's because he's getting something from me rather than giving, right? And so after maybe 10 years in our marriage, and then we started having kids and all of that, there started it started to take place between him and I that I started to feel bad if I didn't want to have sex. I'm like, why am I feeling bad? I'm just tired tonight. I just need to feel okay to not want to give something tonight. It's a gift that we give each other. So why do I feel bad? And then there was this sense of like, I owe something to him. And I told him that. I started talking more about it. I was like, there's sometimes this feeling that I have to give you something no matter how I feel. And that if I don't, it's wrong. And so we did chat these things through, plus the big difficult year that we went through at about year 7. These two things coupled with each other, there's a time at which Matthew started to realize that his way of looking at sexuality was comfort rather than give, was delight. You know, when you give, you give out of delight. Yeah. When you take, it's because you feel like you need it unless you get it. So let's put it this way, like he started to realize, and we talked about it a lot, he started to realize, is sexuality something that happens to me where I have this urge like an animal and I can't do anything about it, and therefore I need something because this animal feeling is over me and I need something to calm down the monster, the animal within me? Is it really what sexuality is? Or is sexuality a gift of my body to my wife because we love, out of desire, we love each other? And that was a big moment for him. So he actually wrote a creed for his sexuality, which I forgot to grab from him today, but I don't know if you post links or things.
Yes.
I could, he would be willing for it to be known for any guy to read it. So he wrote a creed about his sexuality, which is about, I get to arouse the desire for sexuality in my husband, not an animal-like urge that comes over him, but I, in my connection, get to arouse him, you know, like I get to be the one that he desires. So we decided that I get to be the one that wants that with him, and that's how he wants it to work. Not a woman randomly somewhere arouse that, or an animal urge arouse that. So it's really this commitment that I am it, and I am the focus of his love, and he is the focus of my love, and consequently sexuality has been joy infused or desire infused, and not sense of like obligation, which starts making you feel less and less connected when you feel obligated, because it's full of fears. Am I doing the right thing? Do I have to? So yeah, I don't know if that answers kind of.
Yeah, well, it's interesting the way that you kind of framed that, because it just really takes it back to the creation model, is what I see it anyway. It's like we were created to love each other, to become one. And so just like what you just said before, it's not the beautiful woman on the internet, it's not whatever, I see someone on the beach in a bikini, that is not the person who I am created to love and feel those feelings for. I mean, I can't speak obviously for men. I can imagine it's a struggle. But then the other side of it, when you're talking about the animalistic side, it's almost like the evolutionary mindset is that I am just another animal. I have these desires and they need to be met.
And I would call them urges. It's an urge. It's controlling me. And definitely in his creed, Matthew says, I can find a woman beautiful. There's no problem. I can even be thinking this person is attractive, but it doesn't arouse, it doesn't stir my body into a place of sexuality with that person. Only my wife. Only my wife, because that's who I've chosen. And even when you say creed, it's something that you want to believe, right? So against all odds for him and the way sexuality was introduced to him in his life, he's had to speak that creed over his body. In other words, I'm connected. My mind, my soul, and my body are one. I'm not going to be, my body over there has urges and I don't know why, and it's weird and it's doing this thing, and my mind is over there, and then my spirit or my soul is lost somewhere, I don't know where. No, we stay connected. He stays present in his body and his mind and his soul and his spirit, and he can go, what am I feeling? Why is this urge coming, and where does it come from? And often he would ask himself, where is this urge coming from? It's from a sense of shame. Not enough. I want to feel good enough, because men, you feel like the man. If a woman wants you sexually, you feel like the man. It's understandable. And it's important not to look down at the urges or look down at the fact that there's this need to feel like the man, to feel good, to feel masculine, to feel wanted. It's very important, so
It makes me think of, how you said it's a creed that your husband has. It so reminds me of Job 31. I've made a covenant with my eyes, never to look upon a woman with lust. And, there's the Proverbs 31 woman that we kind of look to and we're like, oh, this one's amazing. But I feel like Job 31 is like the male version of that. It's like, can we say that? I mean, we don't have many male listeners, but if you are a male listener, or if you have even young boys,
talk to my husband.
Talk to Cora's husband. And also like Job 31, like get your sons reading that, because that's
so good.
Fantastic.
Do you know what's really cool as well?
Yes.
In Genesis, I love Genesis. It's such an ancient book that has so much wisdom. When God introduces Eve to Adam, a lot of scholars said that flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone, that's actually a song. Apparently, it's a poetic prose. So in other words, the only thing the man could do when he first saw a woman is just burst into creative music, like serenade her. And there's something, we do cause some deep things to the heart of the man, and I feel like crying actually, because I know my husband will look at me like that. So often he'll say, like, you're beautiful. And that's what we all long to hear, you know. And so it's so important to realize that is in essence, their function is to see the beauty in us. And pornography for many couples does take that opportunity of seeing the beauty in the woman a little bit away. It just dampens that feeling of being seen as beautiful. And it can be really heartbreaking. And so please write songs for your women, all you men out there. Like Adam started singing when he saw Eve. And it's really what is recorded is he just had no words, so he sang.
Wow, that's amazing. That makes me feel a little special as well, because my husband proposed to me. He wrote a song for me when he proposed, and so we're like crying because we're just like our husbands.
You know what? They're going to be so blessed listening to this podcast. Hopefully.
But I want to speak for a moment, because I know, like you and I both, we've been there in the hard times where it's just been awful. Like married life, I remember it just being so cold and just like not a lot of love there at all. And so I kind of want to pretend or almost like I am speaking on behalf of the woman who is struggling in her marriage.
Yeah.
So since we are talking about pornography, let's just go there for a minute, because I know a lot of Christian women will be married to a Christian man or a non-Christian man who is struggling with pornography and who has been told by her husband, it's not a big deal, I'm just looking, it's part of my nature as a man, you know, you shouldn't be upset. Why are you upset? I'm not cheating. This is not cheating. And these women like have no idea how to handle that. How do you even broach the subject? How do you share your feelings when you are basically being told that they are invalid?
Well, if it's you out there, my heart goes out to you. That's extremely painful. First and foremost, I think it's important that if it gets to that point in a marriage where what you feel as a woman is not considered as much, or if you try to share how you feel about something and you're being told you shouldn't feel this way, it's not helpful. Though I've done that with my husband sometimes, like, you shouldn't feel this way, and we can all do it, so it's not, don't feel shame if you did. But honestly, in a marriage, if you don't feel welcome to feel what you feel, it's not a good place to be. So first and foremost, don't approach the conversation from right and wrong, because from the moment you say it's wrong and you're wrong, you're putting all the attention on the problem being the person. You're wrong, you're the problem. But you want to bring the problem in front of you, and you want to stay really connected with the person next to you as you look at the problem. How do you do that? You do that by vulnerability and saying, I'm heartbroken, I don't feel beautiful when you do things. I understand that for you it's not wrong, but it is impacting me. Actually, there's a lot of studies, and I kind of took some example. Again, I'll I don't know if I have time now, but to read it, but I can show you the links. But there's some studies that shows that it's proven that pornography present in couples, and there's all these studies and data analysis that have been done on it, the presence of pornography in either a man or a woman in a couple makes it that there's less sexual intimacy. And so it's an interesting thing. You would think, isn't that supposed to help? Isn't that the idea? But it doesn't help somehow. So, you know, when Jesus walked by the fig tree, he cursed it because it bore no fruit. And so are you wanting this because it's bearing good fruit? Is it bearing good fruit in your relationship with your wife or your husband? Well, let's look at it practically. If not, if you don't feel more connected through it, then it's not bearing good fruit. So therefore, say that as a woman, and say, it's for me, my experience, what I'm experiencing on the back of it isn't feeling good. It's not looking good for me. I don't feel closer to you sexually. I'm afraid, actually, when we're in bed, I'll start thinking, are you expecting something from me? Often is what a lot of the women I chat with will say, if that's at place in their husband's life. And therefore, it's really anxiety producing. And so if anxiety is the result, fear is increased. Remember that love and fear are opposites. So if fear is increased as a result of pornography in intimacy, then love isn't present. So how do we rebalance and bring more love where we hear each other? And so as a husband, what are you more committed to would be the question I would have for the husband. And I would just kind of go, are you more committed to that comfort that you get from that experience, or are you more committed to having good connection with me? This is eroding our connection. What do you want more, really? And if really you vulnerably approach your husband and express that's how you feel, not from a right and wrong perspective and something's wrong with you, but from a perspective of this isn't working for me, then it's possible that if he doesn't respond positively to that, it's possible that you need a third party. You need a counselor. You need someone who's going to help you discuss these things safely. Maybe a mediation. Maybe someone who is a trusted friend who can help you communicate safely these things without the husband feeling shamed. But you know, you cannot, as a woman, I'll say this, you cannot fix his problem. You can only fix the problem you have. What's the problem you have? You feel unloved, undesired, or disrespected. That's the problem you have, is you feel this way. The problem he has is he doesn't see that it's a problem. You can't fix that problem.
That's so important. Yeah.
No one will ever believe it's a problem until they have the revelation it's a problem. So you try to convince them it's a problem is not the solution.
Yeah.
Him realizing it's a problem for him is the solution. Get good at asking questions. Why do you need it? Why is it so important to you? Be curious, be open. I know it's hard to hear, but be curious and open, and then go, I can see that that's why it's important to you. Well, that need that you have makes me feel very far from you. And so what are we going to do? You know, how do we feel very far from each other?
And so important what you said about how, of course it's not going to foster intimacy or a wife feeling like they want to be intimate with their husband because you feel like you don't measure up. I mean, like this, there is so much out there. There is the most beautiful woman in the world, and we are just ordinary people. Yeah. And so how are you supposed to measure up? Not only that, but just the things that go on there, you know, like that is not, first of all, pornography is not respectful at all. And it is not about love. It is not about intimacy and connection. It is about, you know, what we were saying before, it's almost about that urge, that animalistic type of desire and need. Yeah. But if someone is wanting to have that conversation, I feel like this is not a conversation that you can just, because I've done this before, I'm having this issue, I want to talk about it with my husband, I'm just going to blurt it out. Yeah. How do you prepare for that conversation?
Okay, first and foremost, you have heavy pain. You feel betrayed. You probably feel maybe enraged, angry at your husband or your partner. You must unload that pain first, because coming to your partner or your husband with that pain, it's probably going to come out really messy. I mean, if he can handle messy, sure, but if he's in that place of life, needing pornography and feeling like he must defend and protect that need, it's possible he might not be in a very good place in life or have really revelation on how to hold space for your emotions. So you must find trusted friends or people who can walk you through the depths of the pain. Some people could even be traumatized from the sense of betrayal. There's this trauma betrayal therapist out there and all sorts of people that can help you first assess the depths of the pain you feel. Then I would really certainly work on your vulnerable message so that you can show it to someone else, practice it, so that when you do come to your husband, you've weeded out judgmental statements that is you, and you see what you, more I'm hurting. Are you willing to hear it? That I'm hurting. Can you make safe space for my emotion? Are you going to be wanting to listen? Lots of questions, lots of I statements if he's interested. And at that point, you know, see if there's good response. That's how you prepare, by asking questions first. You might not get to have the conversation if he's not in a good place, if he doesn't want to hear how you feel about it. If he's too committed to it than he is to your well-being, then truthfully, it will show in the first few questions that you ask. Don't get into a conversation where either you're being gaslit or told what you feel is irrelevant, or a conversation where he doesn't see the problem. Why have a conversation about a problem that he doesn't think is a problem? Yeah. So you must ask him if he sees it as a problem first. Is he willing to see it as a problem? Does he want help for that problem that he has, that you might have contributed to? Let's be honest. You might have been unloving towards him. You might have been harsh towards him, where there's no feeling of love and connection anymore in your relationship. You could have contributed not to him having a problem, but contributing to coldness within your relationship, which further triggers him to want that. And not that it's your fault. No. It's not your fault, it's his fault. But you can contribute to the disconnect. The disconnect is what you both, is one end of the connection and the other end. So it's possible that on your end of the connection you've been cold. It's no excuse for that. But it is still something, do you want more warmth in this relationship? So there's lots of things that you can do to show that your heart is for the connection, it's for relationship, and that right now, this bond is broken. So that would be how I prepare. Ask lots of questions first, see how well he's ready to own his problems, and also ask questions to see, am I contributing to the coldness within connection? Can I love you better as well? Because being willing to ask that question means I'm not taking responsibility for your stuff, but I'm not perfect. You know, I could grow in connection. I could grow in loving you. So these are kind of altogether, if you have a fairly good marriage, these are things that you should be able to talk about vulnerably. But preparing for that with somebody who can help you with the big emotions first, and then going into it really prepared, could potentially bring a good outcome in the conversation.
That I really love all of that. So I just want to try and summarize it just to make sure that I've got it all clear.
Yeah.
So you would say, first of all, find somebody that you trust and spend some time sharing your emotions. Cry if you need to. Even let's say you have nobody in your life. Go to the Lord. You know, like spend some time in prayer and just like crying out to the Lord about this. If you have a Christian friend, you know, like pray together about it, cry together, and then get the emotions out. Not that they are bad, but just if we want our husband or our partner to hear what we're saying, I totally know. As soon as I cry, my husband's like, what is happening? They can't concentrate. We want them to hear what we're going to say. And so that was number one. And then you were talking about a victim, was it victim statement?
No, like an I message, like a vulnerable message.
Sorry,
about
I got the V's mixed up. Sorry, not a victim statement, a vulnerable statement. Basically communicating how this problem affects you and how you feel, rather than instantly coming at it like you are disgusting. You know?
But I'll pause there for a second. If you come with your vulnerable message with a angry frown and you're like, well, I feel unloved. It's not going to work either. That's why the big emotion, the anger you feel, unload that and then come with like sadness. I'm not saying you're not sad. I'm not saying you're not feeling. But the way it's coming through is, I'm hurt, but I want to connect. This is a bid for connection. So vulnerable message.
Vulnerable message. Okay, and you could write that out if you don't want to wing it. Write it out, prepare it in advance. And then I think something we didn't quite talk about, which I think you would agree on, but please tell me otherwise, is choose your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any advice on that?
This is the biggest thing we find so we do a lot of mentoring. So we mentor couples separately, actually. Men mentors man, and I mentor the woman. And as we help each side of the couple, at the end we might have a mediation conversation if they still can't talk themselves. So the biggest thing we find when we ask questions in the mentoring process is both man and a woman will always say, there's just no time. There's no time. Everything's busy. It's very powerless. Like, I don't have control over my life. I don't know when to do that. It's so overwhelming for people to be brave enough to say, Wednesday night, it's not a date night. It's not a hang. It's not a movie night. But I want your full attention. There's some very important thing I want to share with you. Are you available? It's a very brave thing to say.
It is.
Because you're scared now. Wednesday night's coming up and you might have said yes and you're like, what
you're
is
committed.
this going to be? What is this going to be? I think it's very important you're stating your intention. Don't get into that kind of conversation accidentally. This is a big conversation, you know? And you might have had it a little bit passive aggressively and you might have snapped at each other before about this subject of pornography, and so it's not going well to start with anyway. So now you're saying, hold on. This is too important for me to neglect now, or to what do you call it? Under the carpet.
Sweep under the rug.
That's the word. Thank you. Sometimes it's like this English word that I'm thinking in French. Sweep under the carpet is not really the kind of topic I can ignore anymore. So really, warnings, preparation, intention, very intentional. Saying there's a big thing I want to talk to you about, but I'm really coming so I can share my heart. I don't want you to feel scared. But can we really set this time apart so we can chat? Now, Matt and I don't need to do that, because Matt and I have decided from year 7 of our marriage that issues creep up without us knowing. So now what we've done is have this release valve kind of option, of release tension valve option of always blocking, one time of our week where we talk about issues. It's not a date night. It's not supposed to be happy. It's free space. We count 3 hours.
Wow.
Free space for him or I to bring anything up. Now, when I say that, people are like, are you kidding me? You guys are spending 3 hours a week talking about problems between you? I'm like, no, potential problems. Things that could arise, because now we don't blow at each other, that much about things unless it's really a big problem that we ignored, that we swept under the carpet for a long time. So we don't want to do that. So we work together as well, right? So if we work together, live together, and we're married, we must have a space where any problems can arise gently. And so he asks me every week, all right, darling, you have the floor. Anything you want to bring up?
Oh my gosh.
And that is so...
It sounds amazing.
Yeah, I know. Don't get your wrong picture in your head, right? This isn't all rosy and flowery. These are sometimes hard conversations, but it's brave conversation. I don't know if you've heard much of Brené Brown. She talks a lot of rising strong. She talks a lot about having, fearless conversations and not being in shame. And she's really somebody that I've learned a lot from. So really, for me, that was the inspiration, is everything that has to do with Dare to Lead, Rising Strong from Brené Brown, and all the resources I was finding about it. And I'm like, we're gonna set aside time so we can talk about problems. Also, because in his wiring, Matthew is actually quite a positive person. So talking about a problem necessarily drains him. So I tell you what, I love talking about problems. I don't have a problem talking about problems. And he's not the problem, but there's a problem I want to talk about. And I know that he's a positive person, that he doesn't enjoy problems. So I said, look, we've got a problem. You don't like talking about problems. I like talking about problems.
And that's a problem.
And that's a problem. What are we going to do? And I was really, the solution was, he's like, you know what? What I noticed is that if we don't address the problems, they become mountain problems instead of molehill problems. He's like, okay. And I said to him, it would mean the world to me if you ask me. Because you're the positive person, you gotta ask me if you want to talk about the problem. Because otherwise I'm like constantly wondering, can I bring the problem up? And he's like, you're right, this matters to you. I don't like it. I don't like talking about problems, but you matter to me. So we do that every week. And all these things can arise gently and kindly, and we set this particularly about parenting. That's where we find like we want to do things differently sometimes. Parenting, or the way we go about making decisions with the not-for-profit work that we do, we want to go about it differently sometimes. So that one comes up.
So
or our sexuality or anything else.
Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like yours is like the dream situation. I mean, I'm not saying that your marriage is perfect at all. No. But I'm like, if we can start like working our way towards having those clear lines of communication, I think is so important for marriage. Because after we did your Restoring Connections course, just to give like a little bit of a tidbit about something that went on with us, I brought up an issue with my husband. I was like, you know what, this is something that I've noticed and it bothers me, but I don't say anything because I don't know, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm a real like easygoing person and I'm not about rocking the boat. But anyway, and it was literally one thing. It was like, so he comes home for lunch often and we have lunch together, and then he'll go back to work. And so he comes for lunch, and then sometimes he would walk out the door without like saying a proper, what I thought was like a proper goodbye. Like he'd just be like, see ya, and then just like off he went. And I was like, oh, like I am quite a physical touch and like words of affirmation person. And so I'd be like, where's my hug? Like, I want a hug, or I want, love you, have a great day or great afternoon or something. And so after we did that course, I was like, can we talk about it? And I like brought it up, and he was like, yep, okay, great. Yeah, okay, I can work on. And again, I wasn't crying. I wasn't,
telling him he's wrong for not hugging you.
I was just like, look, when I don't get that, I feel like I'm not important in your life. It's essentially what that felt like.
Even if it's not what he's trying to communicate.
No,
it feels that way.
He's totally not on that radar. He's,
all.
Man, one trick mind. As soon as he switches off, I'm going to work, he's thinking about work. And so it was, anyway. So it was like a potential problem.
Simple things, that we can share with each other that makes a big world of difference in our connection. And a lot of people tell me, but isn't that manipulation? He should have guessed. And I'm like, man, the amount of stuff that you would need them to guess to get the love that you need and the care that you need, that nobody is you, only you is you. You only can reveal you. So don't leave people guessing. It's not manipulation if it's given as a proposal. It's like, hey, it made me feel so close to you if you hugged me, and and you initiating it is like it's like ding 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 ding. My heart, like my love tank is going right up, and so
that's literally what happened. I was like, I feel great.
Yeah,
and like,
so
this is
it's
amazing.
it's not manipulation if it's given as a suggestion. Now manipulation says, unless you do, I won't give you, and that's not okay. You don't want to do that, but you can say, I feel fat, I would love that, what do you think? And then I'm sure for him it's like, I never knew this meant so much to you. Wow, that's so helpful to know you more. So that's awesome. Love it.
And I was just thinking as well, for the woman who she's attempted the conversation, it could be like we're talking about pornography here, but it might be something else. What do you do? How do you then get them to get on board? I don't want to. It's so tricky. You're like, how do you make your husband get on board with going to see like a counselor or someone like that? How do you get that when all you're seeing is a closed door? How do you get to that place to be able to resolve?
Well, you don't get him to that place. He gets himself to that place because you have good boundaries and you say, this doesn't suit me anymore. So year 7 of our relationship, when all this stuff happened, we were having this conversation over again where we disagreed, and I felt really hurt. And I can't go into details because it just kind of highlights people's lives, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep that private. But essentially, I felt really unseen by Matt, and we were having this conversation where I was consistently feeling unseen until I realized I don't have to have the conversation. I no longer have to talk about this. He knows I feel unseen. Oh, I can stop having the conversation. I don't have to respond when he brings up something passive aggressively that is about the conversation. And so my boundary of holding myself, okay, so when I say boundary, careful here, I spend sometimes 5+ years talking about boundary with one person for them to really fully understand what it is. When I say boundary, I'm not saying boundary on him, boundary on me. On me. That's what a boundary is. It's not about trying to get the other person to do something. It's about you not doing something or you doing something different. So that my boundary applied to me, and I said, thanks for bringing this up. I no longer want to talk about this. I don't feel safe enough to talk about it. And he went like, what? You get to talk about what I want to talk about, and I get to tell you that you're wrong and I'm right, and that. It was like, he wasn't saying it like that. This is not really him, but I'm saying like he was really triggered that I took the liberty. I gave myself the full freedom to say, no, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. What does it look like for pornography? You'd have to talk to me in private for a long time, and we'd go through personal mentoring, and I'd really ask you a lot of questions about what's going on in your life to find out what's a good boundary for yourself with this issue. But essentially the result of me saying no, I won't talk about it was, and by the way, you are welcome to talk about it with a counselor if you want. I'm not up for discussion about it anymore. I've told you what I needed.
Well, it's so true, because if you're not getting anywhere, you're not going to get anywhere except for further into resentment, further into pain.
And I said, look, if you've talked to someone, like a counselor about this, then I think I'd be more than willing to talk about it with the presence of that counselor present, or on the back of the counseling session that you've had, where I know that you're being accountable about this issue. Then I'd love to talk more. At the moment, I sought counseling, so I had talked to someone. I went through prayer about it, and I sought a lot of counsel over it. And I said, look, until I see that you're committed to that, I don't think I'll feel very safe, but I love you. Now, I didn't say that. A boundary, you love through a boundary. You don't cut off through a boundary. So even though I said no, what did I say yes to? I said, no, I'm not going to talk about it. Can I give you a hug? No, I'm not going to do that. Can I do anything else to show you that I care for you? So you're not trying to hurt the other person with a boundary. You're trying to protect yourself. Because you're worth it equally as they are worth it. So that's you matter and I matter equally.
I suppose that is really actually such an important thing, because I'm like, just being honest here, like I remember when my husband and I were in our really hard place, and I was awful. I was in pain and I was hurting, and I was behaving so badly, like not in front of our children, but like I was just so cold, and I was purposely angry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like embarrassed to admit it, but like I was just a terrible wife. And something that I didn't fully kind of understand was just like, I might be hurt, but I don't have permission then to be an awful person to my husband. Can I, you just said it, like, can you still love? And how hard that can be sometimes is almost, please, like, if this is not the right advice, like, would you say to almost like take the issue, whatever the issue is, and just are we able to, in ourselves, put it to the side and still choose to love?
Yeah. With good boundaries. Because there might be things you say, no, I'm not going to do this. Or no, my heart is not safe. So this over there. And that's what I did. I took control of me again. Instead of controlling him, you were asking, how do you get him? Well, he gets to get himself to counseling if he needs it. So I get to ask him, do you need counseling? Do you think there's a problem? You're not the problem. I'm not the problem. There's a problem. Do you want to find out what the problem is with a counselor? Because a lot of why people actually feel that they're not wanting to see counseling is because they think they're the problem or there's something wrong with them. Shame sets in. But shame says there's something wrong with you. Healthy ownership of problems says, I am beautiful and I am a beloved son or a beloved daughter who sometimes does things out of pain and hurts others. See, that's very different. I'm beloved. I'm loved even in my mistakes. See, the whole gospel is when you failed, he chose you. He came after you when you weren't going after him. So he loves you. He's chosen you. So you must really show that you love yourself in the way that you approach the problem. So I don't go to counseling because there's a problem with me. I go to counseling because there's a problem I want to fix in the behavior. My heart might be in pain. So therefore, I might be doing things that pains others. But I'm perfectly beautiful and I'm beloved. So I might need to adjust my behavior. I might need to say sorry. But in my nature, I'm a beloved daughter. And I've got to really, it's a big wrestle, but you got to go there, so I don't have that.
Yeah, so you're not like, it's not like you're saying that the problem doesn't exist.
That's right.
We can still, I suppose, love our husbands.
Yeah.
But it might just look different to how it would look if the problem was resolved.
Yeah. So I'm still, by example, I'm still having date nights with you. I still can watch a movie, even if we don't agree on this very deep issue, which hurts me. But it doesn't mean that I don't want to spend time with you and watch a movie. So my time of quality with you is still, it's not on the line. My love is, I've chosen you. My love is not on the line because you failed me. You will fail me again, I'm sure. But if I'm unsafe, or if I'm unloved in an area of our life, not all the areas of our lives were on the line. Like he failed in one area, but it doesn't mean that he failed in all areas. He's still a good dad. He still brings me coffee in the morning or whatever else. He knows I love acts of service. So he's really, so he still loved me, and therefore I still wanted to love him. But on this issue, it was too unsafe. So we have in our course a part of our course that says, do you know how to love and still choose your partner in the midst of pain? But very careful, not if I'm unsafe, like physically unsafe, or if there's aggression. I would never encourage anybody to stay and love someone who's doing that, okay? So really, I am not talking about being a victim here and engaging in being victimized, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But my husband, it really did hurt me emotionally, what he was doing, but I don't think he meant to. He wasn't meaning to. And it was painful, but he just didn't know any better. So my boundary was his breakthrough. That's also part of our course, where when I said no to the conversation, it tilted in him that I don't get to talk to Cora about this anymore because she's not up for grabs. I don't get to use her as a punching ball. It doesn't work. I can't do that, metaphorically speaking. So I that's what led to his breakthrough. He did go for prayer because I did suggest it in a very respectful way. And he had the most powerful breakthrough in his heart about what was going on. But because he wanted to, and because he realized that I had done that, and I was giving an opportunity for him to do that too if he wanted, but it had to be his choice.
Yes. Yeah, we can't force. Yeah, I think there is so much of us, like, I don't know if it's a woman thing or just like, it's almost like we can see what needs to happen, we can see the solution, and we just want to get there. I mean, this might just be, maybe that's the way I think, is that, I know how this could work out, I know exactly what we need to do to fix this. But like you said even earlier, if they don't see the problem, and having the healthy boundaries to show that the problem still exists. And so this area of our life, maybe I'm not ready to go there right now. But choosing to love anyway.
Because what kind of relationship you want with your husband? You want one where you're the solution to all his problems? Well, I know what will fix this. You need a counselor, and he listens and he does it because you said so.
No, you forced him.
No,
manipulated him.
No, you want him to know, I value my own heart enough. That will get you way more connected to him. Dare I say, you might have more of the hearts for him when you see him rising strong, going, I need help and I need to be strong. And I can see that there's a problem that I want to fix.
And I'm not saying it's easy. I feel like there's probably people listening who are like, that sounds impossible, that sounds so hard. And my heart absolutely goes out to you. But I feel like if you can just have in your mind that this is not going to be a tomorrow fixed problem, that this is something that is going to be worked towards, even just like that first conversation. And I think great advice too, and I'm sure you would agree, would be to bathe everything in prayer. And just to cover everything with prayer, the conversations that you have, the way that you are towards your husband. I mean, please do better than me, because I was so horrible during that season of our marriage. But I'm so thankful to be on the other side of that now, after persisting and just but it was me who changed so much. Isn't it funny? Like you look and you're like, he's the issue, he's the problem, you know. If he does this, then everything will be good. But when you are connecting with the Lord and spending time in prayer, the Lord can show us gently, you know, hey, here's maybe an area. And I'm not saying, of course, to anyone listening that I think you are the problem. I'm just saying, look, the Lord can reveal things in our own heart, in our own life, and what we bring to the marriage that can actually help us so much, and that we might need to change with the guidance of the Lord.
So good. Oh, I love it. I can see you've worked hard at all this. Well done.
It's been a mission, and I always feel like I had to go through that, but it's good.
I think so. You know, you're listening to this podcast today. Just be careful that you don't take one thing out of it and think that's gospel. You know, test all things. You know, try it. And we have a course that's 16 videos long, and it comes with, you know, a set of 18 questions for each of the videos. And so there's some stuff we do that's quite in depth in order to explain these things better. So sometimes we listen to a podcast and we try something, we're like, oh, see, that didn't work. It's because maybe you don't have the coaching or the support, because you tried it in a way that was maybe without the good heart intent. You were frustrated in the way that you did it. So don't give yourself too high of a standard that you don't meet the mark and then you feel bad about yourself. Just get support. Find communities, people who are talking about these things, and get mentors, get people who can coach you through that, who can guide you through that, so you're not alone. It's good to ask for help. I asked for help a lot in my life. I had amazing mentors, and that's what's gotten me to where I am, because I don't think I could be there if it hadn't been for the help of others. And my failures were great. And it's just to say that, because I know sometimes people listen to what we say and they're like, I'm so lost, how do I do this? And so get support.
So is that available through your website, the videos?
So we have a foundation course. We've really reduced the questions so that this year was 18 questions per videos, but now we've made it smaller, so it's about 3 or 4 questions per videos, but there's 16 videos. It's called Foundation Course. It's about $75. So you can watch the videos, answer the few questions, and then you're in our system, and you can apply for mentoring and say, hey, I think I need support. I need accountability, and I need to know, how do I apply this in my own life? I can hear all the stories from Matt and Cora, and that's great, but how do I do this for myself? And so it's available.
And $75, I think, is an amazing, you know, that is such an affordable investment into your marriage that will actually be something that you will have then for the remainder. Because, you know, like, we come so far in our relationship and we might think it is one way, but you do something like that course and it can just take you to the next level, and then you're just like, wow, I never knew marriage could actually be so great.
Yeah.
I never knew I could actually love my husband as much as I do right
Yeah.
now. That's how I feel right now.
Aww,
But
that's awesome. I love it.
But just a little tip, because my husband was like, doing a course, find a way to make it exciting to your partner, to your husband. Like, I remember we did a parenting course one time and I was like, I'm going to have snacks, like I'm going to give you a back scratch while we do this, you know, like think about what engages your husband's interest. If he hasn't had, you know, I don't know, a foot rub for a while, say, hey, while we're watching it, maybe I'll do a foot, or after I'll do this, or, you know, if it's something that is important to you, you can communicate it to your husband, yes, that this is something that's important to me, but it doesn't hurt to just put a little sugar on top there.
And everybody, you know, it's exactly right. That's why I'm always very intentional. If I want to do something like this with my husband, I'm like, it might not be super fun. How can we make it fun? Because he's a very positive guy, you know. And so it's so good. You know, everybody's different. Some guys, they love that kind of thing, and they want to. It's more the woman who's like. Sometimes it's happened. But making it fun is really key.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just bringing it back to marriage and to your relationship with the Lord in marriage. How has that impacted married life, being a follower of Jesus and, you know, having this relationship? It is like that 3 chords. Right? How would you describe that 3 chord situation in your marriage?
So Matthew will not meet my needs. It's impossible for him to meet all my heart needs. You know, like you wanted the hug, but maybe one day he's not in a position to give you a hug because he's going through something hard, and right now he's overcome with grief or frustration. So sometimes we don't meet each other's needs, and there should never be an expectation that we should, right? Yeah. So for me, it's a balance, a triangle. You know, it really balances when, as you said, the three points, the 3 ropes together. I will definitely always hope for Matthew to meet my need because I want to believe the best of him. I don't think he's some kind of emotionally constipated man who can't meet my need. I believe that he can hear my heart and he will meet my need if he wants to. So I share them vulnerably and some days not vulnerably. Sometimes I'm angry and that doesn't work at all. Don't try that. Sometimes I share my needs vulnerably and he can meet them, and sometimes he can't. Or he won't because he's not in a good place. Not so much he can't. He probably could, but he's saying no, not right now. And so that's where that 3rd point of a triangle or that 3rd rope makes it stronger. I just run to the Heavenly Father, and in what Matthew can't give me, I look for creative solutions so my heart can still be filled and I can still thrive. In other words, I'm not codependent on Matthew for my happiness. My sense of powerfulness and happiness comes from the fact that I love myself and I am loved, you know, or first and foremost, I'm loved and I love myself. So I know how to still feel loved when I'm unloved by Matt. I know how to receive a love that's all powerful, and I know how to go back to the source of life, God himself, to say, I feel in love right now. And he says, I know, and I love you, and I get it. And he meets me there in a powerful way. So I have all sorts of tools that I use on myself to make sure that I always can replenish my soul and feel well and feel good about myself, even when Matt doesn't meet my need. So that's how I see it. It's very practical for me. God is really practical for me. Yeah. He's very, very practical. And if he wasn't, I don't know if I could really get anything out of it. I wouldn't believe if he wasn't practical. I would go, well, you're disinterested in humanity, because humanity is practical. We're on earth, we're forms. And so you must really meet me where I'm at, and I expect him to. And he does. Yeah, so.
That's awesome. One last question, and this is what we ask every guest who comes on. How are you currently living your faith outside of Sunday? And that can mean, you can take that question to mean whatever you feel.
I love that question. What we do is often in the context that is non-Christian. So we're connected to various groups and marais, and also to different businesses and schools where Christian language isn't utilized, or people might have faith. Some people might have faith and belief systems, but a lot of people don't. And for me, that's what keeps me grounded, where I walk into these places, and as I just explain. I teach people about, what do you think is the source of life for you? How do you replenish your love when you feel loveless or you feel unloved? What is it that you do to feel loved in your life? And these are conversations that open to the spiritual nature of things that it just makes me so happy. And it's often a conversation that comes up over and over again. So to me, my actual work, my day-to-day work brings me in places where I'm not in church, and I do talk about spirituality with people in a way where they get interested. And it's my YWAM nature, right? It's my YWAM background of like making God known wherever I go. And so that's probably how I would say I live my faith every day. Is I think Matthew's a better communicator than I am, but I do like to talk stories and tell stories about me that can reflect the nature of the loving God that we have, and so that's what I do. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Cora. This has been great.
Yeah.
And I recommend everyone please check out Restoring Connections. Is that
That's
the best
the
place?
website.
Yeah, Restoring Connections.
Yeah.
Please check that out and organise a date night where you guys can do that. But thank you, Cora, and thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Awesome.
Thanks, Cora. Congrats! You made it to the end of this episode of the Outside of Sunday podcast. Thanks for the support. Become an official outsider by liking and subscribing and leaving a 5-star review. If you'd like to connect with the podcast, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search Outside of Sunday podcast. And don't forget to let someone you know about this podcast.